Imagine for a moment that you've just woken up. Perhaps there's a bit of sunlight streaming through the window, casting a warm glow across the room. You rise, you stretch, begin your day without, of course, any grand announcement. Life does not declare itself, it just simply unfolds moment by moment without any special ceremony. But underneath that quiet hum of existence, there's something we might not immediately notice, the quiet hum of questions, the silent stream of thoughts that accompanies us as faithfully as our shadow. Even in the most ordinary task, making your morning coffee, say there's an unspoken dialogue between you and the world. You might not articulate it, but the questions are there. Why am I doing this? What's the point? This is a hidden conversation we all have with reality. And perhaps the most curious thing about it is that this conversation is not a nuisance. In fact, it's essential. We're creatures who, from the moment we wake up, we begin to seek meaning, whether we're aware of it or not. Some days we're perfectly content with the little meanings we find, the pleasure of the first sip of coffee, the satisfaction of ticking off a task from our to-do list. But there are other days, aren't there? Days when the smallest crack appears in the surface of our well-ordered life, and suddenly we find ourselves staring into something deeper, more unsettling. What am I really doing here? Is this all there is? It's as if life itself pauses for a moment, and in that pause, the deeper questions rush in. Of course, we try to avoid these moments as much as possible. We fill our lives with work, with social engagements, with distractions. We might even tell ourselves that these questions are silly, irrelevant, and perhaps a bit little melodramatic. After all, who has time to think about such things when there's a presentation to prepare for, or an email inbox overflowing with messages? Life, it seems, is always pulling us back to the surface, to the here and now, to the urgent. But let's be honest, these questions, they're really never going to go away, are they? They hover around the edges of our consciousness, waiting for a quiet moment to reassert themselves. In a way, they're a bit like the stars. During the day, they're invisible, drowned out by the brightness of the sun. But at night, when the distractions fade, there they are, immense, distant, and impossible to ignore. And yet, we often ignore them anyway. We've become very good at it. Our culture, in particular, has trained us to be efficient, productive, and most importantly, practical. We've come to believe that the only questions worth asking are the ones that have immediate, tangible answers. How can I get ahead at work? What's the best way to invest my money? How can I be happier in my relationships? These are all important questions, of course, but there's a danger in focusing too much on them and letting them consume us entirely. We risk losing sight of something larger, something more fundamental. We risk losing sight of the fact that beneath the busyness of life, there's a deeper layer of reality, one that doesn't yield easy answers, but that is nonetheless the source of everything we do. Think about it for a moment. All the goals we chase after, the success, the love, the security, they're all, in one way or another, expressions of a deeper need. We want our lives to mean something. We want our actions to matter. And yet, how often do we stop to ask ourselves why we want these things? What is it that we're really after? It's a strange thing, isn't it? We spend so much time thinking about how to live and so little time thinking about why we live the way we do. We chase after happiness but rarely pause to ask what happiness really is. We strive for success but don't often consider what exactly we mean by success. It's as if we've been handed a script, a set of instructions, and we follow them without question, without wondering who wrote them, or whether they're the right instructions for us at all. This is perhaps the central tension of modern life. We're pulled in so many directions, bombarded by so many demands, that we forget to ask the most important questions. We forget to ask whether the life we are living is truly ours. We forget to examine the foundations on which we've built our existence, and in doing so, we miss the opportunity to reshape them. So, what are we left with then? If we're brave enough to step back from the hustle and bustle, to quiet the noise just for a moment, we might find that the real work begins not in chasing after more answers, but in asking better questions. We might not find that the most valuable thing we can do is not to strive for certainty, but to embrace uncertainty. We might discover that it isn't asking, the wondering, and the doubting that we truly begin to live. This, I would suggest, is the quiet revolution available to each of us. It doesn't require any grand gestures or radical changes. It requires only a willingness to pause, to reflect, to ask, what is it all for? And in that asking, we might not find a definitive answer, but something far more valuable, a deepening of our awareness, an expansion of our understanding, and a renewed sense of purpose in the mystery of our own existence. And when we engage with life in this way, we are participating in something ancient, something universal. We're tapping into the very essence of what it means to be human, to wonder, to seek, to question. And if we must give a name to this process, this ongoing dance with the unknown, then perhaps, just perhaps, we might call it philosophy.